That's about $35.6 million from all the trees that we save every year. And about...
From cooling?
This is just stormwater.
Oh.
And this is, it turns out to be about $61 per tree per year in New York City. So
that are cost benefits.
That's cost benefits. That's savings from that water not going into the storm drain. So you think about stormwater capture as just one of several different benefits. You know, improved air quality, improved health, community and business district appeal, reduced crime even. There was a University of California horticulturist, Ted Stamen, sorry. He did a 1993 study, and he found that urban spaces which had been planted with trees had a 90% chance of remaining graffiti-free. All right, so that's pretty, you know, there's not a whole lot of research in this area, so it's a pretty powerful thing to say. You know, I'm curious to see what the next thing is. As well as we talk about this lower summertime air temperature.
Well, one of the greatest economic benefits, isn't it, the temperature?
Temperature, absolutely. And you know, this sort of all boils down to this big return on investment in New York City. You know, we've invested millions of dollars into planting trees over the history of New York City. And our best numbers crunching says that trees provide $5.60 of benefits for every $1 that we spend planting and maintaining our trees. So that's a pretty big ratio, I would say, of taking care of our trees and the benefits they're giving us. So trees are really a huge benefit to us in the city.
If we have some of these like fast-growing trees, I'm thinking what I can't remember the name of those things. They kind of grow very quickly versus trees that are really older and more substantial. Would the more substantial older trees, the trees would have a longer life and wouldn't grow so quickly, would probably be the more advantageous tree?
Yeah, you know, one of the main driving forces sort of behind planting trees in New York City is maximum canopy cover, maximum life expectancy. So we want to put the biggest tree that is going to survive for the longest amount of time in the best place for it. So if you have the chance between planting a cherry or an oak, you're going to plant the oak tree if the infrastructure allows. You know, we really want to plant big, long-lived trees to give us these benefits because it's the big trees that are really the workhorses. And you know, the biggest bang for your buck tree is the London plane. I don't think Robert Moses knew that when he was planting it. I think he knew that it was cheap and easily found. But it turns out that that is sort of like the biggest bang for your buck in terms of all of the good things that trees do. That tree is doing the most for us.
What was that one?
The London plane.
London plane.
Yes, this iconic New York City tree turns out to be sort of the best for benefits for us.
Is that the tree that you're working on in the park?
So
No, this is
elms, you know,
English elm.
English elm. You know, their elm has a sad story actually in North America in that, you know, Dutch elm disease wiped out nearly all of the elm trees in all of North America. Funny, the Dutch actually call it American elm disease because we have there are two. I'll give you the quick, interesting thing, right? There's two elm beetles. Okay, there's a North American native elm beetle, and there's a Asian European native elm beetle, right? And so those elm beetles had lived alongside the elm trees that had been growing in those continents, you know, for as long as they were in existence, and you know, had grown to have this sort of like symbiotic, I guess, relationship. And in some wood that came from Europe, brought this Asian European elm beetle to North America, along with a fungus that, killed all these American elm trees. And around the same time, shortly after, our elm beetle went back the other way and wiped out a lot of those elm trees. So, this is it's a sad story in that people kind of messed it up for these trees that had been growing for so long. And what's unique about this elm tree here that you see in Washington Square Park is that this is an outlier. This is a survivor. And this is a tree that needs to be treated every 2 or 3 years against Dutch elm disease through a trunk injection to make sure that it survives. New York City Parks Department does not have a program to do that. So that is entirely money that is independent of the park's budget that comes through the Tree Trust to take care of this tree. In Central Park, they have a fantastic, along Literary Walk, probably the biggest collection of native American elm trees that we see. And those are taken care of by Central Park Conservancy. And this tree, even though it's an English elm, needs to be treated as well. And so this is a duty that we have taken on as the Tree Trust to take care of this great tree.
I have a question. You just mentioned native. Are there some native trees that are great trees, or can you talk a little bit about that? Because typically what I understand is that native plants, because they're native, they're able to deal with the circumstances of this geography and geology better.
Sure. There are definitely native trees that are great trees. The black gum in Central Park is the biggest one I've ever seen. That's a native North American tree. The white oak, native North American tree. And native plants, native trees have lived in this great sort of northeast ecotype for a long time. And they work, and tulip trees as well, yeah. And they work alongside the native plants and animals that are around them. I'm not sure what tree is native to Bedford Avenue, in that the Bedford Avenue is kind of a new thing in terms of trees years. And the native tree that grows in the sidewalk, some could argue that it's ailanthus, that is not from North America. So what we want to do in our planting plan now is plant a tree that is going to survive the best in the location that it's in. Sometimes that is a native tree. Sometimes it's not a native tree. It's a unique situation having a tree grow in New York City.
Is there a resource that a homeowner or somebody that can go to find out what the best tree for their specific lot would be? Say I'm like in a corner, I have 10 feet of walkway between me and the house. I don't want to endanger my foundation, but I also want to plant responsibly.
My best suggestion to you is to get a consulting arborist to take a look at your location.
Well,
because really, this is people's vocation. There are a number of really good publications out there where you can get that information. There's a great street tree guide put out by Cornell Cooperative Extension. I'd be happy to send you the list of the publications that I have. This is a cute thing. Yeah, this is really a good one.
It's the same one. They produce the same.
Yeah.
It's Cornell. They have a book. This is not the book you're talking about.
That's not the book I'm talking about, but that's
a
good guidebook, yeah.
What's the title of it?
It's a tree ID guide.
It's a common urban trees.
And then this guy's coming out with a new book too.
Yeah, we could pass those
Yeah,
around.
I'll pass this. Yeah.
What is interesting is the word urban, as though a tree in an urban context is going to be different than a tree that's somewhere out in rural America.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny, when I went to college to study forestry, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I liked trees, and I liked people, and I liked, you know, the idea of being around trees. And so I kind of thought about, at the end of college, should I go out west where there's all these like great vast spaces? And I thought, well, you know, like that would be a great opportunity, but I might get kind of bored. People are super interesting, and I'm just as interested in people as I am trees. So I discovered that urban forestry was a field that existed, and like, urban forestry, yeah, this is a place where people really need trees, and this is an important thing to do. It's cool.
Well, the Parks Department has, I mean, how many foresters? It's quite extraordinary. I mean, every borough has its like chief forester and multiple other foresters in there. They're an incredibly dynamic group of people, and they have different headquarters, and there's the National Park Service is doing this whole study. They're putting out a study about the best trees to plant in each location. You can go on the National Forest Service website for here in New York City. There's a link to Nowak, who gave the talk. No?
Dave Nowak.
Dave Nowak gave a talk about it. But, I mean, they feel so overwhelmed, though. That's what I felt. Because when I wanted to just see each one of these trees, and I made it my mission to go mostly by bicycle to see most of the trees. And, you know, I also met many of the foresters, and they're just like, you know, there are 5.2 million trees, and we're planting another million, and we can't possibly take care of them. I mean, all we do is emergencies, and that's really what happens. And then so what I understood was that the Tree Trust was founded, and the original idea by the founders, I think it was Henry Stern, who was the commissioner when they did the tree, Great Tree List or search. The idea was that if somebody is to have to remove a tree for construction, or that they would be fined enough to plant so many new trees to make up for the loss of the old tree. And yet, apparently, because the money goes into the big pot that's called New York City, it doesn't exactly come to the trees. So even though the riverkeeper, waterkeeper was founded by lawyers who were able to make sure that the money goes into the river projects, I think that now that it's obvious that only a nonprofit that's separate from the Parks Department that works so the Tree Trust is a nonprofit entity affiliate. It's
a
part
not-for-profit program of the City Parks Foundation that works in tandem with the Parks Department to take care of the trees in New York City. The Parks Department provides sort of this basic level of care
and a salary.
And,
right.
and the Tree Trust says we can do better than that. There are certain trees in certain locations that require a higher level of care. And these are the trees that we need to take care of.
But they work in cahoots.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
And my office is right along with the rest of the foresters.
It's like HMO PPO.
Yeah, I have a relationship with a few trees called the Catalpa tree. They're near the Bethesda Fountain. And my name's Teresa Valla. I grew up in Vermont in the mountains with mostly pine trees. And I had a tree in my childhood that I spent a lot of time with. So when I came to New York and I lived in a museum of natural history, I claimed a few trees in the park as my own. But I wanted to know if the Catalpa tree, I know it's not indigenous to Central Park because I researched it, but is that tree a great tree by any chance? The ones near Bethesda Fountain? There's one that has a big, that big round, like fungi on the outside.
It's a canker.
It's a canker.
It's a canker on it.
Yeah, these trees are not included in the Great Tree List. Actually, they're not, And, my interest, once we get the existing trees that are great trees taken care of, is what are the next great trees going to be?
So you've seen those particular?
Oh, I know exactly
you know
which
what
ones
you're
you're talking about.
Because that tree, when I first saw it, I used to go there to just relax, just to chill out. And I didn't know the tree at all. And then I see this heart-shaped leaf. And then in the spring I see this beautiful orchid-like flower that smells beautiful. And then in the fall, these gorgeous pods. So I said, this is like a great tree. I get like entertained and you know, just it's very relaxing. Yeah. So just keep that on your list.
Yeah. I love that you have that relationship with that tree.
Yeah,
I think this is the kind of relationship. This is the kind of relationship and conversation I hope that the project Behold will bring for people to be able to highlight, their tree or this tree specifically, and say, oh, maybe I should start to think about trees in a different way. Maybe I should stop and take a look at that tree. What is it doing for me?
Yeah.
How is it helping all of us? What do I feel about it?
I thought even perhaps having that each great tree not only perhaps would be adopted, but that some kind of respectful, very simple tree guard could, because the tree at Washington Square Park, as beautiful as it is, people are stomping on, going up and touching it all the time. And in a certain way, what I understood is that the roots are, the ones that collect most of the water are very superficial. And they're very fine on the surface. We think of the roots going down and like getting the water out of the well. But in fact, the roots that collect the most water are delicate and they're on the surface, which is why people are always talking about compacting the soil and how terrible it is when you have asphalt and there's no moisture area for the tree to absorb, right?
Yeah, you think about a tree growing in a field like this, Fernleaf Beach here in Central Park, right? The roots for that tree, you're going to find 90% of the roots for that tree are in the top 2 feet of soil.
Really? Wow.
Is that true for all trees? 90% of the roots that collect water?
Yeah, top 2 feet. Because it's incredible because how does this tree grow in this 5x5 cement coffin in the sidewalk? Because that tree's roots grow horizontally to the edge of we call it the drip line, to the edge of the branches and beyond. So these trees are growing, or the roots are going all over the place. And so we've really put trees in, really.
What do they do under the asphalt? I guess they're right under the sidewalk, right?
Yeah, I really don't know how they do it.
Or people walk on them.
But yeah, and so there are trees that, things that we can do to protect the trees, to make sure that they have a little bit easier life.
What about the dog pee?
Super bad for the trees.
Right? It's horrible, right?
Yeah. Would it be good, I've heard the last time we had a talk, Lillian Ball mentioned that there's a type of surface that's absorbent, that's made from recycled.
It was concrete and glass that she used to build a kind of barrier between the parking lot and the river so that the runoff would get collected in that section. And also there were some plants, they discussed plants out in the park that were going to absorb, those plants themselves would kind of absorb some of the toxic materials. And I don't know, is that what you're thinking?
Well, I was just thinking, instead of asphalt near some of these trees, maybe one guard could be that there's a little walkway that goes around it.
A permeable paver, something that is going to be safe to walk on, but water can pass through and oxygen can pass through to the roots.
Has it been something only recent that the city is starting to pay attention to, or is this, if you were to look back, say, sort of the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years of how the city, or we as culture, have been addressing these tree issues, is this something that's become more recently acknowledged and taken care of, or is there sort of a change going on, or do we need to make much more of a change because they're just trees that we just are not taking care of?
I think speaking to the short-term history in New York City, there's been a vast improvement from 2007 to today in awareness of trees through the Million Trees campaign. We have a mayor who said in 2007, in the next 10 years we're going to plant 1 million trees. It's a clear goal, It's something that we can count, that we can say, this year we got this many in, we're in good shape, we're on track, and there's a lot of this awareness of we're planting 20,000 new trees on the street every year. We are, yesterday I participated in this so cool tree planting project. Every spring and every fall we have a massive volunteer tree planting day where in habitat restoration sites all over the city we plant these 2-gallon trees, right? So 2-gallon containers, about like this big.
What is that?
And so this is even tinier. Actually, we can go ahead a couple pictures here. And yeah, there we go. So this is yesterday. I was in Alley Pond Park on this site that is about 15 acres, part of Alley Pond Park, where it was 3 years ago a vine land, okay, full of invasive plants, rose, vine, porcelain berry, stuff that is not native, doesn't belong, not ecologically helpful to plants, animals, any other critters that live in there. 2 hard years of removal of those invasives, you end up with this sort of blank canvas prairie, meadow. If we just left it at that and let nature take its course, in a perfect world, native plant woodland would develop. Reality says if we did nothing, it would return right back to what it was, because these invasive plants that are around are just crazy. So we kind of skip. I think that's going to be it. So we spent yesterday, earlier in the week, digging holes. Okay, 7,000 holes, and putting these 2-gallon containers just sitting in the hole. And yesterday we had about 600 volunteers who showed up starting at 9 o'clock in the morning and who had the experience of planting a tree, several trees, and really reforesting this whole area.
What were the trees?
So these are all, this is the super cool part of it. These are all native trees whose seeds have been collected within 150 miles of New York City. So we're talking not just a native tree, but we're talking about local genotype, local seeds. Okay, so we're preserving the genetic history of New York City and our region. And we also planted along with those trees native shrubs that were grown at the Greenbelt Native Plant Center in Staten Island, which is a project of the Parks Department to collect native seeds, grow them on, and use them in habitat restoration projects. Super
So
cool.
what kind of trees are the native trees?
So we planted sweet gum, tulip tree, redbud, a couple different kinds of dogwood, black gum, some maples.
And they're all, every single tree is decided where it goes in relation to the other? Whole thing is laid out on a...
Roughly, yes.
Yeah.
You know, the idea here is that we are going to be sort of skipping the first 10 or 20 years of natural forest regeneration and giving these trees a chance to grow up faster than these noxious invasive plants can.
Excuse me, you had a question?
Oh yeah, I was going to ask if there's been an effort to collect the seeds of the great trees.
So,
that's a nice project.
this is a
Can you
super
repeat that
cool...
question?
Yeah, sure. Is there an effort to collect the seeds and preserve the genetic history of these great trees?
Better yet.
So, if we go back one picture.
Yeah, that's great.
So, yes, there is. We've had awesome leadership from Coleman, from Bartlett Tree Experts, from Schichtel's Nursery, Oregon, to collect wood from some of the great trees, to propagate them, to clone them, to create this genetic reserve of information, this living museum, I guess, of the great trees. And so this spring we'll be bringing back 2 of the first trees that we've cloned, which is super exciting. This ash tree from Van Cortlandt Park, and this willow, actually also from Van Cortlandt Park. This is a picture of this fernleaf beech. Top right is the parent tree, and the left there is the actual graft sitting on the rootstock of that little baby tree growing.
This is the one that's under.
We do have this project in process to preserve the genetic history of these trees, which is awesome.
Okay, great. I actually have a question which is not about Behold, but we can go back and talk about that very soon when she comes back here. As the world is warming up, I hear that certain species are going to not be able to survive this that well. And I'm wondering how that is impacting the choices in trees you're taking and so forth.
Yeah, we need to plant. We're planting a tree not for today, really. I mean, I'm not planting all of these trees for me. I'm planting them for 100 years from now. I mean, it's a great idea that I'll be alive 100 years from now, but
Chances are.
we'll see what's going to happen, right? We're planting these trees for what's going to happen 50, 80, 100 years from now. So.
Yeah, and if you get involved in the tree trust and you give money, we guarantee you'll live for 100 years. You can live, right?
Yeah,
Isn't that the idea? It's like eternal life.
I guarantee you that'll be fine.
Eternal
That's a
life.
good idea. That's a very good idea.
For sure. So yeah, we need to plant trees that are going to survive through this change. We know that there's this shrub, leatherwood, Durga palustris is the scientific name. And it's a shrub that you find in the forest that 30 years ago was in the forest, sort of like the Palisades in Jersey, kind of cuts across where New York City is. Now you're hard-pressed to find it in northern Connecticut. Okay, this is a rapidly changing range of this plant, and it's because it's just too damn hot. We look at the maple sugaring industry, and we know that those trees that were tapped even just 20 years ago, they don't run sap the way that they did 20 years ago, the same tree in the same place. There used to be a big...
So they're bushes and trees that are signifiers for how much the climate has changed.
Absolutely. These are definitely indicators. If you talk about the critters that we use, salamanders are used a lot. But you just look at the overall makeup of the trees and this sugar maple's on its way out. Don't plant it. It's a gorgeous, amazing, incredible tree, but 20 years from now, those things are going to look like hell in New York City. It's just our reality.
I think it would be really good to go back and talk more about what Behold is doing, sort of an overall scope of what the idea is and how it fits into this, how it's influenced by what's happening here, and or working in a relationship with Tree Trust.
Well, my fantasy is always the great beneficial collaborations. And so I would love to imagine that a number or the right nonprofits group that works within all 5 boroughs. I'm hoping to have a conversation with Creative Time, although I don't know that they will want to be the curators of such a project, but I'd love to think that a real citywide, rambunctious, ambitious group would curate different projects for great trees throughout the city, and that it could be an ongoing cultural program where attention is drawn, where there could be a series of events that happen not only at nighttime but also perhaps during the day. There could be a forum of writers that gather. There could be readings. There could be, you could have 100 school children they would light the tree just with the sunlight with their mirrors. There are different things, I think, that one could invite different local collaborations for each of the trees that's chosen. So the idea of Behold is to create a dynamic collaborative project that raises awareness about great trees and helps the Tree Trust to get people excited about adopting trees and contributing to their maintenance.
Absolutely. Behold is the light switch to get people to see the trees and see how they can help to take care of the trees, the great trees, or the great trees that are around them.
I mean, there are many wonderful nonprofit groups in the city. They all have their different roles. Many of them are educational. I mean, there's Trees New York, which has its own role. They have a number of people that are on staff that go into schools that teach children about trees. They have a citizen pruner course that I'm about to start this week on May 1st on Wednesday. And Million Trees has a whole educational aspect and an outreach program, but nobody's really working from the arts standpoint. And I think that with the amount of talent that we have in this city, so much can happen to, maybe you have a choir, maybe you have, it will depend neighborhood by neighborhood what can sort of build around each of the trees that we choose to be the trees to celebrate.
I immediately think of instruments made of wood.
Yeah.
Think of what? Instruments made of wood, musical instruments.
Yeah.
I'm making musical instruments.
So,
What if you have a favorite tree that's on private grounds? It has to be what we're talking about, favorite trees, it has to be...
well, we're thinking of public events, free public events. So I know there are many wonderful trees on private grounds, and that's the New York Restoration Project is working with the trees on private land, and the Million Trees is planting on public land. So it might fall more under the jurisdiction of the New York Restoration Project. It depends if it's on somebody's.
But we do have some of the great trees are on private land, and so this sort of partnership that says this is a great tree, it is worth preserving, it's worth taking the resources of a greater organization to preserve this one tree. There was a fantastic great tree, another white oak, on Arley Road in Queens, and it was just massive, but a branch fell off the tree and nearly took out the house. The homeowner was concerned, and even though everyone in the neighborhood didn't want the tree removed, it's
gone
on private property. They found some yahoo with a chainsaw to cut it down. So this is perhaps an opportunity where, if the Tree Trust had the resources at the time, we could have done a proper evaluation of the safety of the tree and taken some steps to make the tree safe so that that homeowner didn't feel threatened by the tree, and we could still have the tree today. So this would be an opportunity moving forward where the Tree Trust can help support these great trees continuing to contribute to the health and beauty of our city.
Or help.
Website for the Tree Trust? Do you have?
So we have a tiny little web space, but actually in the next couple of weeks.
He started in January.
Yeah, in the next 2 weeks we're going to have a big update, and actually I've got an intern for the summer who's going to be putting together a website specifically for the great trees of New York.
And that's what we'll be able to locate.
And then you'll be able to get the information about how big they are and all that jazz. So it's a work in progress for sure.
There's been a GPS mapping of the trees that's been,
I'm sorry.
It was her.
So these trees are in the 5 boroughs, essentially, the great trees.
Yes.
Yeah.
even in Manhattan.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Everywhere.
I got another, the other tree I love is near the Museum of Natural History. It's on the south, so Museum of Natural is about 81st Street. It's on the south corner near Central Park. It might be an oak, just so, and these gorgeous arms. I was photographing it last week. Very expansive, and it goes over the wall. There's a stone wall also. It's very, very beautiful.
I'm gonna have to look at that next time.
It's at 78th and Central Park West.
West.
It would be the northeast corner there.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's a huge canopy, hobbit-looking kind of situation.
There was somebody to create an app, right? It's not very up to date for the trees. I mean, there's something called Tree Snap, which is a good way.
Leaf Snap.
Leaf Snap.
It's a tree identification.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Leaf Snap.
Leaf Snap.
It's app.
Yeah, on a white piece of paper, you need to do it.
It's okay. It's a little glitchy, but it's good.
Yeah. But then there's also, there's an app for finding trees that relates to the, did you know that?
No.
Oh, yeah, well, it's
What's that
For
called?
what?
yeah, it's for the trees in the city, where you are to locate it. But it's not accurate.
Oh.
So there you go, another project. Yeah, wherever you are in all the 5 boroughs, you can actually see the circle on a map.
Oh, well, I know that there's the stewardship map on the
No.
website, but I didn't know that was
This is something else.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier like vandalism of important trees, and I wanted to know what the dialogue has been like in regards to, obviously you want to celebrate this tree, but how do you do it in order to obviously shed light on it, but also not make it a target? I grew up in Central Florida, and the senator was like a really big spiritual part of me. And if you don't know, it was like the 5th oldest tree in the world. It was an 18-foot wide cypress, and a crackhead lit fire to it in 2012 when he was high, and destroyed the tree.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And
It made the news.
so yeah, it made global news, but so I mean, I would just like hate for like a majestic tree. Obviously, like that was a very special thing, but rare, and people set fire to trees all the time. But I would just hate for it to become so revered that it becomes a target. I just wanted to know what that kind of like discussion has been like.
Honestly, you know, it's been an ongoing conversation between myself, the director of tree preservation for the Parks Department, Matt Wells, and a couple other folks in our office, and we have like this tree up in the Bronx where like there have definitely been some folks up there like lighting fires near the tree
Because it's hidden.
and so
many
it becomes this challenge of, well, like how do we like bring attention to this tree? And
Do you build a fence around it?
Yeah.
part of it is you want people to be able to experience the tree, but part of it is like it needs to be kind of like left alone in some ways. So I think there's a cavity at the bottom of this specific tree, and so one of our things is, well, like we need to find something that's just going to be like so boring and difficult to break down that they're just going to leave it alone. So there's a cavity in the bottom of the tree where like you could really like start a little fire and burn the tree down from the inside, and so it's pretty clear to me that it's like probably some like teenagers, some like kids who have got too much time on their hands, and so like I was a kid recently, right? And so if it's a chain link fence, you can kind of like that's kind of like flimsy, you can kind of cut it apart and do your thing. If it's something you can kind of like kick a little bit, bash in, and like you're going to do that, but something really sturdy, something really boring and sturdy to just like deter anyone from messing with it.
Unbudgeable.
Yeah, some like bricks in the tree or something. I don't know what it's going to be yet. It's a conversation of what is the right thing to put in this space to keep people from lighting fire to the inside of a tree.
But have you thought about meeting with those teens, finding out who they are and talking with them and engaging them and enlisting them to say, hey, this is your tree. Take care of this tree. We have teens in our neighborhood that are very involved with a little stretch of a garden along some steps. And teens can go one way or the other, but it's a very right time where they have a lot of idealism.
Mm-hmm.
And if people look to them and say, you know what, you can do this, man, you are so filled with ideas and vision, sometimes the right approach.
That's part of the idea, is to get people to adopt trees, not just, the Million Trees does have this tree care program where you actually you adopt that tree. And you once you learn to do the pruning, you can actually, watch over that tree. So it'd be beautiful that if you could get, 5 people in the neighborhood to say, we're going to watch over this tree, we live here.
But especially the teens, because they're the ones that probably like fires.
There's a fantastic organization in the Bronx. It's called Getting Involved Virginia Ave efforts. Okay, GIVE is the
Getting involved.
Getting Involved Virginia Ave efforts. Okay,
Virginia Ave.
Virginia Avenue. Okay, up in the Bronx, and they work in this. It's a zip code in the Bronx, and it is this triangle that's bounded by the Cross Bronx. The Sheridan runs through it. There's the Bronx River. There's the Cross Bronx Expressway. There's the other one. Anyways, this triangle of the Bruckner, this triangle of highways, okay, that border this neighborhood, and they work inside of that neighborhood. And they're a group of super motivated people of multiple generations. The majority of the folks doing tree care work and neighborhood beautification, there are a lot of teenagers, and they're out there in, Starlight Park and in Concrete Plant Park, and they're out there cleaning up trash, taking care of the trees, watering them in the summer, and it's a fantastic grassroots organization. And it's my hope that, it's my vision, like the grand vision, is that the Tree Trust is going to help empower those people to take care of the trees in their neighborhood in a way that a parks department never could. These are folks who live in front of these trees, who see them every day, and they're the ones who can keep the neighbor from having their dog pee on the tree every day. The Parks Department's never going to be able to do that.
Yeah, you think here we are in a city, we don't own any land, we rent apartments, or you might own your apartment, but you don't have any dirt, right? Seems like the least you could do, it would be great to adopt a tree.
Yeah.
That actually is a great civic idea that also could be turned into some sort of art project as well.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody else, another artist could get involved in something like that.
It would be wonderful to think that the number of citizens that we have, at least half of them would adopt a tree.
Yeah.
That we could, how many million trees, how many people? Or 1/3 of the people could adopt trees and they'd all be adopted.
Yeah, it's really...
Actually, in my neighborhood, there was a little sign hanging on a tree that said, "Please water this tree." And I don't know, who put that up there, but I followed the rule.
Thank you.
I don't know how good it was because, it was surrounded by cement and sidewalk.
Every little bit of water helps.
It helps.
In the first 3 years after they're planted, even if they're 8 or 10-year-old trees, is when they're most likely to die.
Yeah, but who would have put that sign up?
When a new tree gets planted, by the Parks Department, it gets a little, million trees tag with a little bit of information about how to take care of your tree. I've seen neighborhood groups put up little signs that say, don't let your dog pee here.
Right.
Don't. This isn't for your trash.
Block associations.
Yeah. It comes from all these different levels, but the first step is making people tree aware. And so, don't lock your bike here. Yeah. So
Put up more bike racks so that
you
have a choice as to where you. Now that we've lost our parking meters, that means the trees are more threatened.
Well, I would say this has been a treat of trees.
It's very I love talking about trees, of course.
This is wonderful. Thank you.
Does anybody else have other questions? Yes.
Speaking of dog pees, what do you have any suggestions? We're always asking people not to just curb your dog, and it's not bad for the tree. People get really angry about that issue, and it's something that I'd say more often than not, I'll see people letting their dog pee in the tree pit.
Do you have a tree garden on the tree?
Yeah, we have a tree guard. We plant flowers on our block. What's that?
They're just peeing right into the tree bed.
Oh, or they walk in.
Yeah.
They go up and over. We have some tree pits where they've actually now built high enough so they won't go in and the dogs were peeing in there. That one building, they put up acrylic. They had the guard up this high, acrylic in there to keep the dog pee from going in. But if there was, it seems it would be really a useful thing to figure out a strategy to encourage people not to. I don't know what it is. And then I get mad. That doesn't help.
What is the actual effect that the pea has?
So dog pee changes the pH of the soil, and when you change the pH of the soil, you lock up a lot of the nutrients so that the roots cannot absorb them.
Could you compensate for it periodically?
Hmm?
Could you compensate for it periodically?
Certainly, you can help, the tree bed by, adding mulch, by watering it, because you'll flush out some of those, salts and everything that's in the dog pee. Just, it'll help some, which is a good thing.
I have a question about, could you measure a tree, a big tree that you don't really know the age of, and like if it was 100 inches around, whatever, then the next year it was 101, could you calculate back how many years it
It would
was?
be really tough to do that because trees grow in response to the season, yeah. So, when you look at a tree, you can kind of compare it to other trees of the same kind that have a known age, but, like
In the
those
same area.
Yeah, but like the
But when it's warm, I know this, I make musical instruments that the wider the grain, in the top, it's got to be tight. It means cold weather makes it grow tighter. So.
Yeah, it's tough, like you can compare sort of white oak in the northeast to white oak in the northeast. It'd be really tough to compare white oak in the northeast to the, like a southern white oak, because they're going to grow at different rates. Yeah, the only way we can tell is to look at those rings. You can do that through a coring or when the tree actually kicks the bucket.
What kind of instruments do you make?
Violins and dulcimers and banjos.
So that wood you got behind your building, can you make like
Oh, no,
instruments and have a concert?
There you go. That's
It wasn't, what kind of tree was it out
It was a
there?
white oak.
No, oak wouldn't make a good instrument. It's too wide a grain.
What kind of wood do you like? Maple.
Maple and spruce and
cherry.
cherry, walnut, maple, spruce, walnut, sassafras again. Yeah.
It's so good. It's so
They grow real big in Kentucky where I'm from. And they were cut one down and it rolled into the creek, and so my cousin and my father pulled it out, and then they sewed it up into lumber, and then I put it in the loft of my house. And then I made a dulcimer.
That's so great. Well, yeah, I'd like to send, give you all my card so that, you can send your tree information and ideas to me. That way we can keep this conversation going beyond even just tonight.
That's very nice. It's nice to know that there's a tree trust in Manhattan.
In the whole
And
city.
it works with Manhattan. Yeah, in the whole city, excuse me. And it works with artists. Yes.
Other parts of the country, there are other organizations similar.
Yeah, there's different like where I'm from, there's like the Newtown Forest Association, and you buy up land to preserve. So there's kind of like different, similar ideas,
Yeah,
but
we're
different.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you.
Thanks for coming.
It is open, and hopefully by next April, we will have a major event in Washington Square Park.
Oh,
Yes, Tree Trust.